Renault is no stranger to the electric vehicle market. Over the last 10 years, it's sold more than 400,000 battery-powered cars, and the Zoe has been one of the most successful and affordable electric vehicles in Europe. Now the company has an all-new model. It's called the Megane E-Tech Electric, and although it has a familiar name, it is an all-new car with a whole new approach and a new platform. So we're going to show you through some of the features of this new model.
Take a moment, enjoy the calm. You could be stuck on the N7 with two teething toddlers, but we don't do stress at the AA. We do roadside rescue, and our trained mechanics fix 8 out of 10 problems at the roadside. Buy online now at theAA.ie. Relax. Yellow and black have got your back.
The Megane is going to be positioned in the C segment, so that's going to put it up against regular hatchbacks like the Volkswagen Golf, Hyundai i30, a lot of household names, and obviously Renault's own other Megane. So there is going to be two Meganes in the range at the moment. Speaking of range, well, this is going to have two different battery sizes. It's going to be available with a 40 kilowatt battery and a 60 kilowatt battery. The latter will also be available with two different power outputs of 130 horsepower or 220 horsepower. Total driving range for the larger battery is 470 kilometers for the less powerful version, and the more powerful 220 horsepower model will still do up to 450 kilometers on a single charge in WLTP conditions. The smaller battery should be a little bit more affordable and will still do, Renault says, 298 kilometers on a single charge. If you haven't sat into a Renault in quite some time, you could be in for a surprise when you get into the Megane E-Tech Electric. This is, well, it's quite snazzy, it's quite smart, it's fairly upmarket. Granted, this is a range-topping model that I'm in, but the overall layout doesn't differ a great deal across the range. What you'll notice first when you get in is you have a kind of oval-shaped steering wheel. It's not square, but it's not round. It's not as extreme as what you'll find in a BMW iX, but it's nicely laid out. There's a relatively small airbag unit here and two large chunky touch displays. What's more impressive is the dual 12-inch display. The instrument cluster aspect of it is very crisp and clear. It's very easy to read. It's very nicely laid out. You can clearly see how much battery range you have left. It will show you your speed, how much your energy you're using. Either side of that you have some air vents, and then there's this portrait style, again 12-inch display. It's now a Google-based system, which is similar to what we have in the Polestar, and it's really useful to use. It's very intuitive. It reacts incredibly quickly to all of your inputs. There's no discernible lag. One feature I really love is the fact that it has Google Maps as its native satellite navigation system. That also means when you have your destination inputted, it will also show you not only your arrival time, but it will show you how much battery range you will have left. If you input a charge point along the way, it will also tell the car that you're going to be stopping and charging, and it will start to prime the battery so that it is at the optimum temperature for when you plug in. Better still, there are still physical controls here as well. It's not an entirely digital experience, so important key features you're going to use and want to be able to use intuitively without looking is things like adjusting the temperature in the cabin on either side. That's possible. You've still got a physical hazard light switch and a central locking button. Below that is a wireless charging pad. Again, very useful to have. You can just put it in there. The car does have wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay, so that means you can keep your phone charging there all the time. And this is then leaves a lot of space here for this open area. There's a storage unit here, which you can then have various dividers and set it up according to how you want it. There's also a cup holder. There's more storage here, and under the armrest there's also then another bin as well, so you can put more items away. There's a reasonably good sized glove box. It's perhaps a little shallow, but it's fine for keeping documents in. One other feature that's in this range topping model is you get a normal rear view mirror. If I'm honest, what you can see out of the back is pretty limited because of the shape of the rear window and the roofline, and that's even without having anybody sat in the rear seats. The good thing is it's a camera based system, so you just flick that toggle and you then get a live unobstructed view from the rear facing camera, again like what we've seen in Land Rover product and Range Rover product of late. It's very crisp, it's very clear, it's easy to see. It should work reasonably well at night too. It doesn't give you, it gives you a wider field of view, but it does mean that if somebody comes very close up behind you in traffic, you can't necessarily see all of the front of their car. It's not a wide angle lens, but it works quite well. I've been using it all day today, and I've rarely gone back to using the conventional mirror function. I just prefer that. The only thing is obviously as you turn your head, you're not going to get a different angle of view. It's always just the same, but it is wider, so that's a good thing. One other thing to talk about as well is the quality of the materials inside. It's definitely taken a step up from what we've seen in past Renaults. This has a lot of leather, like for example on the top there's this leather effect and this wood inlay across the tops of the doors, but on lower spec models there's really nice fabric options as well, and I actually think they look better than what's in this range topping model. So do have a look at some of the other materials that are out there. There's a good choice, and I think they actually look a bit more stylish. Getting into the rear is actually quite easy, even though it looks like it's quite a small door aperture. Getting in isn't that hard. And once you're in, it's quite roomy inside. The roof is okay. I've got probably a couple of inches of headroom. I'm 5'9", and I can reasonably stretch out here in front of the driver's seat. So this is set up from my driving position. I've got a couple of inches of knee room. I can just about get my feet in under the seat in front. And the windows themselves, although they're not particularly high, they are quite long, so I can see quite a good bit out as well. So if I'm sitting in the back, even though it's quite dark, there's no glass roof in this car, I can still have a pretty good field of vision from when I'm sitting here. There's reasonably small door bins. They're okay. You can get a small drinks bottle in there. There's a pouch at the back of each seat as well, so you can put in maybe a tablet, computer, or magazines. There's a pair of USB-C charge ports here. I've got ventilation here, although no temperature controls. And the actual seat itself, the headrests and all that aspect of the front seats aren't particularly big, so I can still see into the front quite easily. In fact, from where I'm sitting, I have a full unobstructed view of that large 12-inch tablet display in front, so if I was watching the map, for example, or anything like that, it's very easy for me to see. Overall, it's quite roomy back here. The middle seat, just the shape of it isn't really ideal for sitting on for any long amounts of time. You've got a nice bit of bolstering on the base of the seats as well, so if you're in either the outer seats, it's quite comfy. The middle one is a little bit of a compromise, but that's a very common thing in this segment of the market. There's no fold down armrest on this particular model. The seats do have a split folding function, so if you do need to put bigger items in and you don't have anyone in the back, you can lower that down. And also both of the outer seats have ISOFIX points. They're very easy to access. They just have two little covers here, so if you do need to get in and out, it's quite good. And the fact that the doors are quite long, although that could be a little bit of a pain opening in a car park, it does open wide enough that if you're an adult trying to put in a small child into a seat, it is a little bit easier. To open the boot, simply push this square button here, and that gives you full access to the boot. There's a reasonably wide aperture, and it is quite deep as well, so you can get a lot of things in there too. The CMF EV platform does also allow for slightly better suspension setup. It has a multi-link rear end, and what that really translates to is it handles a little bit more sweeter. It's what you see in normally slightly higher, more upmarket models, particularly some of the German cars would often use a multi-link rear end. All it really means is that at the higher speed stuff and in the twisties, it seems a little bit more composed, a little bit more solid, more reliable, less likely to bounce around, and only on very uneven road surfaces that we've experienced today did the suspension feel a little bit busy. For the most part, it soaks everything up very, very nicely. The steering is quite nice too. Renault has adjusted the steering ratio so that you don't have to have quite as many turns of the steering wheel to get the desired angle. Now, suspension and chassis and steering changes are all nice and very welcome, but the real thing that people will want to know about the Renault is how good is it when it comes to electric driving? Well, this is the more powerful 220 horsepower model with the larger 60 kilowatt hour battery. Today we have done a lot of driving. We started with a 100% full charge, and so far, if I look at the trip computer, we have covered just over 206 kilometers of driving throughout a whole variety of different scenarios. I'm talking high-speed motorways, dual carriageways, slow country driving, city driving, and even some pretty steep mountain climbs. So after 200 kilometers, we're still showing 40% battery left, just over 140 kilometers according to the onboard computer. What's perhaps more impressive is that it has returned an average consumption figure of 15.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which in my opinion is pretty respectable given the type of driving we've done today. Now, it will vary depending on how you use the car. For example, I'm in the car on my own today. I don't have 2 or 3 other people. That will obviously add more weight to it. But it will coast very freely if you want. There are several layers of regenerative braking that you can have. You can adjust them with the paddles here. There's also a number of driving modes. They don't change a huge amount. The biggest difference is when you go into a sport mode, and it certainly is a lot quicker. It unleashes all of that 220 horsepower, but I've been driving it in comfort for most of the day. I've had the air conditioning on. It's relatively warm here outside, and yeah, it's been very good at what it's been using. As first impressions go, Renault has made quite a big one with this car, and I think buyers are going to be very pleased with what it is capable of delivering on performance.